as promised, here's the video on how to pull your motor, put another motor in, how to deal with some of the common issues. But this is just going to be a common swap between two cars. Obviously this one has been totaled. The front end's irreparable. I mean, it could be repaired, but it would require a firewall forward repair, and I'm not about ready to spend that much money on a salvage car. So basically what I'm going to be doing is dropping this motor out of this car and taking you along the way on what to do. I already have some things pulled off, like the power steering pump and the AC compressor, because I needed to get those out of the way, to get the sheet metal out of the way so I could even do this. I had the radiator, or the condenser, pushed all the way against the headers, and it was just a nasty mess in here. Obviously you can still see some jagged metal there. I'll probably cut off. I might leave, I don't care at this point. But as you can see on this motor, it's going to be a little bit different, because if you look at that motor mount, it's been pushed back this way, and that bolt's binding up against the actual sleeve of the mount. And same here with the transmission mount, the same way. Those are going to be a bastard to pull out. The lower mount is toast. Just hoping it didn't bend anything down there. I'll actually remove the 3 bolts here and drop off that stabilizing arm, and I'll do the same thing here with the air compressor mount. Or I mean, not the air compressor, but the AC compressor mount. Basically what you start off with is you drain the fluids out of the car, which I've already done the radiator because I had to. They're not that hard. There's a little plug at the bottom of the radiator. You loosen it and it drains out the radiator into a pan. Depending on your city, you can pour it in your toilet. I know Aurora, Colorado is one of those cities you can do that with. They're able to handle that. So if you had questions about that, you can go to your city's website. I'm sure they'll have information on that, or be able to call the city and ask them what's going on. If not, there should be collection sites around to collect the used antifreeze. Don't just dump it in your yard or dump it out in the street. So the first thing you do on any swap, doesn't matter what you're doing, is you take off, or you unplug the battery, disconnect it, and I take it out of the car. I don't want a cable just accidentally hitting it when I'm working in the car and everything else. I just don't want to take the risk on that. So the thing I do is I pull this screw out to release that wire. That way I can take the whole wiring with me. I mean, I could disconnect it down here, and I might do that just for simplification so you guys can see what I'm doing down there. But you can disconnect it from the starter if you really want to, too. That would release the positive side altogether, and you wouldn't have it in your way for doing what you're doing. Seeing I'm going to strip this car down, I'm going to have plenty of extra parts and things. And while you're up here, you might as well take out this other Phillips screw head and pull this out, because this actually goes with the engine harness itself. Okay. The engine wiring harness on these cars are right up here. Let's see if I can get you a better picture of that. On an OBD1 car, it's 3 plugs. On an OBD2 car, some of them are 4 plugs. Just depends. And then over here, you pull this harness as well. This is the other side of the harness that supplies the dash, usually, and other parts of the car. There's one bolt here that holds it in, and then you just kind of flop them over. Usually you want to get rid of the strut bar that holds the suspension together, but I'm not going to do that until I actually get the wheels off and get the axles out, because there's a lot of tension on that brace right now, and I don't want to. I want to wait till I get all what I need to pulled off before I go in and start removing that. Back on the topic of mounts, there's another mount See if I can zoom you in on it. Right there on the back of the engine. That mount, I don't know if I can get a picture of the bolt. No, I'm not going to be able to. There's one bolt that goes into it like this, and there's 3 bolts that attach to the motor itself. You'll need to pull that mount, and there's 2 ways of doing it. I'm going to do it the easier way, and that's just to pull the bolt out of the back of the mount here, and pull the whole thing with that brace included with it. You can take the brace out. It's kind of a pain in the ass to do it, but I've done it before several times. Now, if you ever run into an issue with this where the car, the car went like that, both frame rails went like that and pinched the motor in between, there's going to be a lot of pressure on these mounts. Do not try to pull the bolts out from the mount itself, because you will strip them out. Same goes for this side. So there's a way to go about doing this that I'm really thinking about doing, and that's, like I said before, I'll take out the AC mount, I'll take out the stabilizing mount for the transmission, and then I'll pull the bolt, that bolt, well, you can see it, there you can, pull that bolt out, hopefully. If I can't, I'll have to cut the bolts out, get a sawzall in there and cut them. Of course, you have your axles. There's one down there. No, the light's not the best, guys. I apologize. That little thing with that little silver band on it's an axle. Then right above it, you'll see a bolt that sticks out the side, and that's the fill tube for the transmission. And then underneath, over here, in this, down in this area, I'll get a better picture of it, is the drain tube, or the drain plug. And it's just a ratchet end into it. So you just torque it off and drain the transmission oil, drain the antifreeze. Be careful of this clip because it busts. Just pop it out like that. And what I usually do is I undo this clip, and I take this radiator hose and I put it into there. Doesn't necessarily need to be tight, it just keeps it from having antifreeze everywhere when you drop this motor. Now you're going to ask me how I plan on dropping the motor out of the car, and I figure most people don't have access to an engine hoist or don't want to spend money on one. And besides, at the factory they were installed from the bottom up when they did the install. I'm going to be pulling it through the bottom. There's ways to do this. I've done it several times before. It's not real hard. You just got to have a lot of planning. You're asking, well, how do you lift the car over the top of the motor? Well, back where the catalytic converter is, you'll see it back there after you disconnect all the shift linkages and stuff. I put a 2x6 or a couple 2x4s there, and I jack up the car at that point, and that gives me the height to pull the actual motor out from underneath this beam. You may have to tip the motor over a little bit to pull it out. You may not. Just depends. Also, when I go to pull motors, I pull this little sensor here because it's a freaking expensive sensor, and it's part of the emissions sensors. So you have to have it. On JDM motors, you won't have this sensor, and it's just a Phillips screwdriver. Usually, that's on there pretty good. So I usually come down with the punch and get it torqued out of there pretty good. What else? Basically, this episode is just an overview of what needs to be done to do this. Obviously, if you have AC and you plan on keeping your AC, but just plan on putting a new motor in, say like this was a D15 and you wanted to go up to a D16 Z6, like this motor is, you can unbolt the pump and kind of tie it over here to the actual radiator support, keep it out of the way, and that way you don't have to drain the AC system every time you do it. There's a little bit of room in there. You can manage to get it out without doing that, or without having to drain the AC. Power steering, you have to disconnect. Two little bolts here, has a little reservoir. I usually just pick it up and move it so it'll be up here like this, out of the way, if you plan on putting it back on as well. Usually that's the easiest way to get those two out of the way. You'll need to disconnect your cruise control module. There's just 3 bolts that hold, 3 bolts that hold that on. It sits in there like that over the mount. Obviously you have to remove it to get to the mount. So that's already done. You don't have to disconnect these power steering lines, because I just did it because I'm trying to get them out of the way. They're bent to crap from the accident. Obviously your frame rail looks like a taco or an S there, then it becomes a problem when you have just all sorts of lines and everything bent in all sorts of directions. As for the clutch, this is your slave solenoid. This is a hard line that comes out here to a bracket, and then over here is the hose. Obviously this one's really tight because the engine's stretched, and then you have a bracket on the side of the frame rail right here. So the easiest way to take these off when you're doing the motors is just to pull it down here and do away with it, or just pulled it over if you plan on putting another transmission that has a clutch in it. If you plan on just taking it out of the car, then just disconnect the line, just drop it with the car, because obviously you're not going to use the clutch again in the car. So let's see what else. Now, before I ramble too long, it's already 12 minutes, so it's almost 13. I'll cut it at that, and I'll start working on this tonight, and I'll try to show you as much as I can. I'm kind of on a deadline to get this out and get it in the other car this week, so I'm using all hand tools except for a few. I have a power hammer drill, but that's going to be useful a little bit wherever I can fit it in there. Otherwise everything's done by hand. Alright, anyway, I'll talk to you guys later.